talked about the fact that you and the president are sometimes treated differently. Those were your words. What did you mean by that?
Well, there's a certain level of vehemence, it seems to me, that's directed at me, directed at the president. People talk about taking their country back. I can't look into people's hearts, look into people's minds, but it seems to me that this president has been treated differently than others.
Now, Al Sharpton, when you gave that speech, said that he thought it was about race. Those were his words. Are they yours?
Now, there's a certain racial component to this for some people. I don't think this is the thing is a main driver, but for some, there's a racial animus.
Some Republicans would say to the president, to you, there they go again, raising the race issue in regard to how the administration functions. Do they have a point?
No, I mean, what I just said was that is only, I think, a driver for some people. There is a lot of ideological, a lot of ideology that drives this criticism. It's interesting to me that for whatever reason, Republicans decided early on that this was a president they were just simply not going to cooperate with. And over the past 5.5 years, we have seen demonstrations of that, where the president has reached out his hand, offered compromises that have simply not been met as they have been in the past by a Republican Party willing to do the appropriate things. And when I say the Republican Party, I'd say a faction of the Republican Party, and I'd even go further than that. I'd say a faction of the House Republican caucus that has simply said we're not going to cooperate with the president.
I want to get to voting rights. Republicans say over and over that this is about rooting out fraud.
I think we first have to understand that this notion that there is widespread in-person voter fraud is simply belied by the facts. There's just no proof that shows that happening to any significant degree. I think these are basically political efforts to try to make sure that certain groups that are not supportive of those in power, it's made more difficult for them to have access to the ballot. And you look at the way in which these voter ID efforts, for instance, who is disproportionately impacted by them: young people, African Americans, Hispanics, older people who, for whatever reason, are not necessarily supportive of the Republican Party.
Do you expect to take action in the coming weeks to deal with some of these issues?
We have already filed suit in Texas and in North Carolina. I expect that we're going to be filing in cases that are already in existence in Wisconsin as well as in Ohio. We are 50 years away from Freedom Summer. We're 50 years away from the death of 3 brave civil rights workers, a year away from the 50th anniversary of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. While I'm Attorney General of the United States, I will not I will not allow people to take away that which people gave their lives to give, and that is the ability for the American people to vote. It's the most basic of all of our rights. It's the most treasured of all of our rights. And I'll use every ability that I have, every power that I have as Attorney General to defend that right to vote.
Looking at race, Donald Sterling's comments about black people, that controversial rancher out in Texas saying that African Americans might be better off as slaves. Where do you think we are in terms of race relations? And obviously, we have an African American president. Progress. Look at you and I. We're sitting here in London doing this interview. Where do you think we are realistically in terms of race?
Well, I think we're in a fundamentally better place than we were 50 years ago. We've made lots of progress. I sit here as the first African-American Attorney General, serving the first African-American President of the United States. And that has to show that we have made a great deal of progress. But there's still more we have to travel along this road so we get to the place that is consistent with our founding ideals. And I'm very optimistic that this country will get there. It happens in fits and starts, and there are going to be incidents that we're going to have to deal with. But we should learn from those incidents, learn how we talk to one another, learn how we come up with policies that will make America the nation that it is capable of being. But I think this will happen.
You used the phrase nation of cowards earlier. It sounds like you've shifted somewhat since the beginning of the administration.
No, I wouldn't walk away from that speech. I think we are still a nation that is too afraid to confront racial issues. You know, we had the Sterling incident. You have what that rancher said. Those are opportunities for us to engage with one another across the color line and talk about racial issues, and we too infrequently do that.